Hello and welcome back to the Unstuck podcast. I'm Heather
I'm Cameron.
and we're back today with some more questions from you. So thank you for submitting them. Um, you ready? Just jump right in.
Yeah.
All right. First question is, okay, how do you currently communicate about difficult topics or emotional needs?
I think we talked about this a little bit yesterday. One of the big things that has helped us recently to approach difficult topics is when you have the intention and commitment to remove bitterness, it makes the conversation always go better. Especially if both of you are practicing. I've noticed this. Topics that I thought normally would have gotten us to be a little more contentious with each other, went better when we decided not to bring bitterness and we could just talk. So even if I was misunderstanding or I was starting to feel a little hot, if I just didn't go to bitterness, like, and she didn't go to bitterness, we kept this very calm talking, and we just kept going. And eventually, it came to a very positive outcome, and we understood each other better.
It's way easier when you're both doing it, but not necessary because you really can control what
Right.
your own experience and you can walk away. Like unless you're being bound and held against your will, which is a whole different problem, um, you can decide what your boundaries are for conversations. And if someone is crossing that boundary, and you get to decide what you want to do. A boundary isn't a rule someone else follows, it's what you do when you're faced with somebody that's encroaching on your own boundary. So it's nicer when you work together. And that's one thing I've been really grateful for. I know a lot of people don't have that. One person isn't willing. Sometimes both aren't willing. But it is really helpful if you can be on the same page and both be in that same effort to try and communicate better. I think we had like an example of this yesterday when we were at lunch. Um, we were talking about a book that we've been reading, and one of the downfalls of reading like anything like mindset or self-help, to propel you into better, higher ways of living is that like you're constantly confronted with opportunities for change, and change isn't always easy. Change, if it were, we would be doing it already, right? We would already be living the optimal life that we want because change is easy. Change is hard because our brains work in our favor by creating habits. Breaking those habits feels like you're like grinding gears or veering off the freeway. And so it's uncomfortable. So we were reading a book. This one in particular is called 10x is easier than 2x. And it's just about like the principle of working hard, like just doubling down on your efforts or completely changing what you focus on so that your results are much greater. It's a really good book so far. We're not done with it yet, but I would recommend it. Um, anyway, we were talking about up leveling our own lives and how to start creating more 10x in our life. And one of the principles they talk about in the book is removing 80% of what in your life that isn't actually getting you towards your goal so that you can open up your life so much more to put in the things that do so you can create that more rapidly and more easily. And so we were just talking about removing those things, like, and that's a sensitive subject, right? Like all of a sudden it's like, oh, you want me to take away the things that I enjoy? Like, and you can start to like, I think for us, we had a lot of past patterns. Tend to want to control, right? And you, and please correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but what I see is like there's like I think even from childhood, like a desire to hold on to comforts because like, you know, you were,
Being a pleaser.
yeah. So like these dynamics created like, well, you're just wanting to control me, and I, could have been going the route of you just don't want to let go of the comfort, things that comfort you, and like, why don't we just work harder? And like you can see how our baggage and our own maybe even personal weaknesses or personalities can like contribute and make this a huge convoluted thing. And the whole point is, right, to 10x and to improve our lives. And so there was a little bit of misunderstanding in how I was approaching it, mixed with just old ways of approaching things. And I wasn't communicating as optimally as I could. And my meaning wasn't, I think like I was trying to do better, but I was still operating in old patterns that made it sound like it was operating in old patterns still. And so what we did was just like, I don't know, how would you describe what we did? Because like there was definitely a moment of like tension and we weren't understanding each other. And I remember I distinctly remember a moment where I'm like, I'm really not feeling the things that he thinks I'm feeling and doing right now. I know I'm not. So I could get upset and defensive over it, or I could let him know, I think you're misunderstanding. Can I explain more? And then we just talk about it until we got some clarity and understanding. And I think you allowed that to happen. You didn't just assume I was being controlling and that was my initial motive. And we just kept communicating on it until we like there was some even ground. And what ended up happening was I learned better how I can communicate with you in approaching these subjects. And I think you learned too that like I don't know, what did you learn? I don't want to speak for you. What did you learn from that experience?
I think I learned that uh, it's important to it's important when you have something that you think is happening in a certain way, but it's not explicit. You should be clarifying,
Be curious.
and even if it sounds like somebody is doing something in a way that you don't agree with, it's important to just ask them those questions, and that can let them refine it, or it can help show them that okay, maybe I was doing that. And I also think it's important to be graceful. It's like when you talk about when kids are playing sports. I do think it's important to work hard to win the game, right? But it's also really important to be someone that is a good winner, someone that is gracious with with their success. And so I think it's sort of similar when you're in an argument. You need to be the type of person that it's easy for someone to come down from their hill if they're doing something wrong, you know.
I think I think by securing your sense of self, it helps with that. Because I was able to have in that moment the presence of mind to realize that like I know what I'm doing. And I felt confident that I wasn't I wasn't, doing anything wrong. And so by by having that sense of confidence, like it, whether he believed it or not, didn't change who I was or what I was doing. It didn't mean anything about me. And it never does. And I think too, like there's two ways of going about this, right? Like I think oftentimes we get really defensive. It's like we actually see the truth. There's a mirror there and we're like, we don't like it. And as we were discussing too, I was like, you know what? There actually is a little bit of a mirror there. I probably was doing this because of old programming. And I can think about that more. And I think if we just like if you just pretend like you're on the same team, which you really are, and you want the same, and I guess that's assuming, right? Like be clear, what do you actually want? Do you really want the same things? I think that's like the foundation you got to start with. Um, are you really on the same team? And if not, then you have some other conversations to have that, might be difficult. But if you want to be where you're at and you're both love each other and want to be with each other, then you're on the same team. Like there doesn't have to be a fight. It doesn't have to be um like it just think about it like what can I do to help support and love the other person? If someone's having a harder time, swallow your own pride and sit back and help. You're really good at that. I think I'm getting better.
It's an aspect of being a pleaser. I'm willing to rethink and be it's a balance, right? I can be being reasonable, or I could be trying to control you by just making you happy again, what I think is making you happy. So that's another aspect that I was thinking about a minute ago when it comes to approaching difficult topics. You should be checking in mentally on whether or not you're trying to control the situation. Your intention should be you should check in on your intention. But what is it? Are you trying to improve something? Are you trying to build? Are you trying to? Because remember, we talked about there's yourself, there's the other person, and then there's the thing you're working on, which is marriage, which could be project, which could be friendship, which could be but it is separate from you, and but it is being affected by your actions. So check in with that intention. What are you doing? So if you are trying to manipulate, if you are trying to so what if Heather was trying to be more controlling, and now that I was saying something, she was going to change her mind and say, well, no, it wasn't that. Well, then her intention is something different. If I was trying to just please her and just be like, sure, whatever you say, then my intention isn't to work on a better relationship. My intention is to relieve tension, or to control her in a way that makes me feel more at ease with myself or whatever.
You can either be right or you can work on something better,
So
you
yeah,
know? And it's like, what are you focusing on? Because what you focus on expands. If you're focusing on is like, is this person that you love and care about, and you're at an impasse, and like, how can we fix this? How can we repair? What can we do to regain some common ground and compassion and for others? And also, like, I think that the helpful tip is like, listen to understand. Don't listen to respond and to retort and to, like fight. I think oftentimes our listening skills are really just so we can like, you know, one up the next round. So are you listening to the other person to understand them better, or to feel better about your own position and to prove that you're right? What are you focusing on?
or it's transactional. I'm listening because I know that'll get me what I want. She'll finally say yes to the thing that I'm asking for, or uh, you know, I need them to do something for me, so I'll pay attention for a minute.
Yeah.
And
It, it's
checking in on that intention is really important. I think take a moment if you're feeling that there's some sort of tension coming up in a conversation, just take a moment and just take a deep breath for like 3 seconds. You know,
it's really easy to get flooded in the moment when you're in an argument and lose sight of all of that. So I think like reminding yourself every day, like setting those intentions every day, how can I build this relationship? And if you're thinking about that primarily, as part of your everyday life, and you're not just reacting to life, but you're living intentionally, it'll really help. And then the other aspect, we touched on this a second ago, is like, are you good with yourself? If you're not good with yourself, if you're living or you're responding and acting in such a way where you don't like yourself, then you will feel more desire to defend, because as soon as somebody sees it, like, you don't like that. No one wants to be seen in that way. And that's part of intimacy, by the way. All of us have those areas. We are all going to be seen by those in our lives that are close to us in our ugliest moments. And it doesn't really do any good to fight it, especially if you know it's true. Um, be grateful that you have somebody who is seeing you and still loving you and wanting to be around. And get comfortable with being seen. I think that intimacy is one of the hardest things that we could do, but it's one of the very most rewarding, because as soon as you find somebody that you can have that with, you don't, it's like it opens you up, it frees you up to be who you are and to work on yourself, and you don't have to fight so hard to not be seen.
and I think one of the best parts about difficult conversations is it's just like difficult training for something else. When you go to those difficult conversations and you successfully navigate those with your significant other, it really does strengthen you, and it does create a deeper intimacy. How they talked about being seen, I think that's part of it. I noticed that when I had situations where I didn't want to answer in a way that I felt like could cause a problem, I might deflect it or lessen it or minimize it. But I found recently when I'm more direct, it creates a greater intimacy. It doesn't. It might create a little bit of a friction for a little bit, but the end result is always something greater and better.
Um, I think one thing to this question is also asking, um, let's see, how do you currently communicate about difficult topics or emotional needs? So I think we respond to like difficult topics, but like how, if we have an emotional need that's not being met, let's talk about that for a second, because I think we do it like wholly, like people do this the wrong way. Um, that my emotional needs are somehow your responsibility,
Right.
and your emotional needs are somehow my responsibility. And if I'm not owning your emotional needs, then you don't love me, you don't care about me. And I think we should, like, it's really important to, can't have this conversation about how to bring it up and talk about help without identifying first, like, who owns it. Your need is your own. Like, I can't control what your needs are, and so because I can't do that, I really can't own them for you. Now, that's not to say I can't support you and I can't love you and I can't
That's
help
a
you.
really key factor you just said there. We can't build someone else up. You
No.
can support them as they build their set themselves. That's super important point to make,
And the
because too often we think, for instance, the same thing with teaching. You can't teach someone. You can give them information and they can decide to take it and to utilize it. So when you are teaching someone, I do think you can think of it. It's more mentoring than it is teaching. I really believe that. Um, but so again, going back to your emotions, I can't I can't help Heather have an emotion. I can support her in helping influence even an emotion. I can influence an emotion, but in the end, the decision of what emotions you have are your own.
Yeah, or whether you feel like it's enough or not. Like I can't control that. If you've got a hole in your cup, I can fill it and fill it and fill it and fill it, and it will never end, and you'll continue to need. And like it's like there's so much that you have to own about your own needs that no one else can do it for you. And I think the reason why we even go there, like why we even project like my need, like why I might project my need on you, is because we haven't figured out yet how to fill it. So it's like, okay, it's got to be someone else, and it should be you, because you're my, you're my husband, and you love me, and I need you to be happy, and you're not helping me with this, and we get into this again, victimhood, but like we, our needs are different, and also I would say, and this is a whole other topic, what is a need versus a want? Um,
Yeah,
but we can go there another time.
I think
But
so.
let's just, for the sake of like what we perceive as needs in our life, if you're wanting someone else to own that for you, you are never going to be filled because they simply
So Heather, I'm going to tell you what I think happens in our brains, because I think a lot of times people say, yeah, we think of these principles and we go, yeah, I'm not doing that. I can see this person doing that, but not me. If there's something someone has to do for you to feel better or to be
can't.
okay, then you then
You're projecting that on someone else, and it can't
then
be
they
owned by
own your
them.
feelings. They
Yeah,
own your feelings. You do not.
because you can't control. Like, what are you gonna do then? Like, then you start to be control freaks, like I was, and am still fighting, by the way, because you need them to show up a certain way for you to be happy. You were doing the same thing. You needed me to see you a certain way for you to feel good about yourself or better, right? And so I, it's really important that to 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 get clear on who owns it, and also know like you're not going to be happy if you give it to somebody else because they'll never feel it the way that you're going to want it because they're not inside of you and they don't know what you're feeling and they don't know how you need it. They can only do their best. And so allow others to be a support to you. All right. So now that we've discussed like who should have ownership of our needs, how do we open those conversations when we need support? I don't think we're perfect at this yet, in that, like, I think we still like to project needs on each other, but we're a lot more conscious of it. And I don't think it leads to the arguments like it did before. But I think it's still like this balancing act of figuring out, what ownership looks like. But, but what do you have any advice, Cameron, for the best way to go about opening that kind of dialogue when you're feeling like I'm struggling with this and I feel like I have certain things that aren't being met and I'm trying to fill my cup here and then seeking that kind of support from people in your life and specifically to this like from each other, from a spouse.
I think it's good to start out with honesty. Um, And I think it's also good to express it's express an understanding. So for instance, if I'm feeling hurt because of a situation, I think it's good to express that I'm if I am expressing hurt, even if it's something that you're doing, it's good to be conscious that I understand that it might not even be what you're doing, and I'm just trying to get clarification. But if I'm just expressing like I have a need of a feeling, it's also good to I think it's also good to kind of like understand what you want from the
I think
conversation as
we don't.
well.
I think we don't. I think we want it to be fixed. I think that's part of what causes the problems.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but that's what I'm saying. Like, so for instance, if I'm saying like I'm feeling kind of like emotional right now, and this happened to me just the other day. I remember I was asked, I was saying how I was struggling over something, and like you were trying to help me in a really nice way, but I could tell that I really just wanted some affirmation. I really wanted just some kind of comfort and some nice words of affirmation. And so that's what I asked from you. And I think part of it, a lot of times I think we get really stuck on, I don't want to have to ask for something. I just want somebody to kind of know and give it to me. And while that's understandable, and
It's
that's
always
nice,
so nice when that happens, right?
of course.
We can't rely on that. That is not
And I don't think it's wrong to want that, but I think it's wrong to
it's
need
not
that.
realistic to expect someone to be able to know how to do
No.
that, no matter how much they love you.
What you can do is you can, again, going into the mentoring thing, I can mentor you and say, oh, I really love it when you do that. Or when you do something expected, react in a way that's really like that reinforces that, and that can help that. So I can influence that kind of support, but sometimes it's just not going to be that way. And so it wasn't that way that one time. And I remember I straight up told you, and I just said, I just want some affirmation right now, just some nice words of help
I think
boost me up. And
I think the key component was that you did the work to figure out what you actually wanted. You know what I mean? Like so much of the time, I think it's like you're not giving me what I want. I don't know what I want, but I need you to give me what I want. And it's, we don't actually think of it in those terms, but it's kind of what we're doing. If you don't know what you want, need in that moment, no one else is either. No, maybe they'll guess and get it right, but being able to know like, okay, what is it that I'm missing right now? Why do I feel unsettled? Why am I feeling upset? And then if you can identify what that is, it's simply a go. You just
well, and
like
also recognizing that if I am feeling some discernment, my feelings are, again, it goes back to ownership. They're my own. Even if you're doing something I don't like, my reaction is mine, and I can choose that.
the I when I think the problem comes when maybe you do know what it is. Like you could have come at me with, you know, why are you doing it that way? Like, I just need affirmation right now, as if I should have known, or like upset
Right.
because that person didn't deliver what you wanted. And instead, if you can just like wipe that clean and go, this person loves me. And unless they're in the middle of, you know, an argument or whatever, but like if someone's genuinely just trying to help you, like we often get so upset when we're not getting it the way that we want it to, instead of just communicating like, hey, right now, like I really could just use some comfort. Um, and I've noticed that I've been doing that more lately too. Like if I'm feeling feelings of insecurity, or especially like surrounding, because I have ups and downs of feelings. Like some days I feel like, wow, you sure?
Hmm?
Some days I feel um really great. Like I can look at the fact that Cameron had kept those things from me for so long, and see it in the context of somebody that was hurting, and like how grateful I am that we're healing and where we're at now, and I'm feeling strong and great. And then there's some days where it just feels, and the way I describe it is it feels kind of like all of my, like the things that I do to build myself up, like somehow just like then, like maybe it's just too high, or the burden's a little bit too heavy, and it's just like I don't have the same mental capacity to like choose out of like little triggers that might happen. And so in those moments where I've had the trigger and it felt too much, I've learned to just be like, I'm watching myself, right? So as I start to happen and they start to pile on, instead of waiting and just like toughing it out, I'll just go to Cameron and I'll say, I'm feeling a little bit, I've had some insecure feelings today. I'm not feeling as strong as I normally do. Like I really could use some connection, and I really could use just some time. Like, can we spend some time together? Can we just snuggle and watch a movie or something like that? And I'm learning to ask for it, like ahead of that like moment where everything's crashing down on me, and then it feels too hard. And I think that is really helpful too, is just be watchful. Like, how are you feeling? And if it's something's coming up that's wrong, like letting the other person in your life know, like, hey, I'm just dealing with this today, and this is how I think I could be supported best. Is that something you can help me with? And it helps them. I think it helps set it up instead of like a blow up out of the blue where they don't even have any idea you've been dealing with like, little chips every, throughout the day or throughout several days or weeks. And then all of a sudden it's a big blow up. Like just be conscious and aware where you're at and communicate.
It's funny how it comes back to ownership of your feelings again, because what you just did requires that.
Yeah.
When you're having the ownership of your feelings, when you're doing that, it automatically generates that because then you don't have to have someone show up for you. Um, they get to show up however they're going to show up, and you get to ask for that support, and it doesn't mean something less.
Yeah. And if I'm aware of it, if you're not able to give it to me, or maybe you're just not home, maybe you're not around in general, right? I can find something else because I know like, hey, I'm in a weakened state right now. What can I do to support myself? And to know what those things look like for yourself in advance can be really helpful so you're not left scrambling. One of the lessons that I know I've been learning lately is detaching myself from I had made Cameron like my security. Our relationship, our marriage, everything like that was source of my security and safety and well-being. And I'd lost myself. And so one of the blessings of this whole experience for us was to recognize that I was doing that because I didn't understand it was. And to say, okay, like he cannot be my source of security. He can't be my sole um sense of well-being here. Like I actually like who can do that for me without fail? And like the answer for me was God. And so it's been giving me an opportunity to not rely on him for those things. And I can ask for support. He can love me through it, but my reliance is now being shifted to a being that can actually promise that and has promised that, and I can rely on that. Where Cameron can do his very best, but he's going to fail. I can do my very best, and I'm going to fail. And it's a way happier recipe for success and 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 finding your source of strength during difficult times. So I think that I think that pretty much answered, how we go about communicating. Um, let's see. Yeah, how do you currently communicate about difficult topics or emotional needs? I think that covers it all. All right. The next question that we have here is, what are some ways you both would like to improve communication and understanding within your relationship?
I've noticed, and I probably would have been doing this for a long time, and I've just noticed it more lately, that I will um, jump to a conclusion faster than I have understanding. And so I think I should, even if I'm right or I'm fairly certain I'm right, I should I should try to clarify first.
Question it before you um assume that it's real
Yeah,
or treat it as if it's real.
yeah,
I think that's really smart. Um, because it's not that you have to completely like rule it out or ignore it. It's that like this is information, this is an experience I've had before. So this is information to help me make the best decision right now. So, I can pull this into, my perspective and use it to help me gather more information, but always start out curious. I love the suggestion. I don't even know where I heard this from. I know I've heard multiple mentors talk about, just being curious and staying curious, and how those that that particular trait will keep you in a perpetual like learning state to always be the student, right? Um, that every opportunity in life is one where you can learn from, even if you're the one teaching, even if you're the one, you're the expert. Like if you approach life that way, just in general curiosity, like you're only going to continue to grow and progress. And but if you think you understand and you think you know and you assume that like once you've learned this is how it always is, you're going to limit yourself a lot. Um, and you're going to be wrong a lot because things change, people change. Um, Principles stay the same, but actions and people change all the time.
And
Um,
understandings change too.
yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to think of something I would do to improve our communication. I think mine is in a similar vein. Be slower to making those assumptions. I think would be really helpful. I also, um, I also sometimes like. I think this desire to control how other people perceive you is definitely an enemy to intimacy. It's actually the exact opposite of intimacy, right? And I've noticed like I will do that sometimes is I'll like play it out or I'll hyper focus or fixate on something and try and work it out in my own head. And I'm missing the opportunity to just like, have the ability to talk through things with Cameron, or others, because I'm worried that people might think something or that, about me or that maybe they'll think I'm stupid for this or, or maybe, whatever the fear is. I think sometimes in order to try and like control, perception, I'm pretty good about not doing this, not being afraid to ask questions, but sometimes I will definitely withhold, um, because I want to figure it out first so I don't feel inadequate. And I think the times that I've leaned into like, hey, I'm just dealing with this right now, and I know this is an underdeveloped side of me, but this is where I'm at, and allowing myself to be loved and seen in those moments really opens up doors because like we all have those feelings. I'm not the only one. I'm sure every single person here that's listening feels at moments like they don't know what they're talking about or they don't know, and it's embarrassing. So I'd like to improve more in that, to be more vulnerable, to be more, um, willing to admit that I don't understand something in the pursuit of becoming better and becoming, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's, overall with our communication, I've been really like, I feel like I'm really blessed. I'm grateful for the communication that we have. Um, it's something that's always been important to me, was good communication. Oh, I know another one that I can improve on that I want to be better.
Mhm.
Because I value good communication and I feel like in general I do an okay job at it. When I can't communicate effectively, I get angry like so fast. And the thing is, like the lesson that I get to learn from this is like I can do everything as clearly as possible. I still cannot make somebody listen or understand or want to, because I know that, especially as a kid, sometimes it's like, yes, 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 they just want you off their back, right? They want to be done with the conversation. And no matter how clearly I communicate, I can't make somebody listen clearly and I can't make somebody remember. And so, I really want to like find an outlet so I don't get so frustrated so quickly because I in turn, like it's all about like taking ownership, right? I mean, I let it mean something about me when somebody else's choices, were were not what I wanted them to be. And so that's another way that I definitely would like to, and I do it with you too. That's the one that came to my mind, example. But I
I've
definitely,
noticed sometimes it manifests in like you'll think like I do get what you're saying, but I'm not you're not getting the reaction from me like or something like that. So you'll keep
I'll
this.
repeat and
It's
repeat
like
and
a loop
repeat.
that'll keep going. It's like
It is very important to me to be understood. And I think what I need to do differently is that it's important to me to communicate clearly. Now, whether I'm understood or not, I can't control. you know, and maybe the feedback sometimes is you could be better with how clearly you're communicating. And maybe sometimes it's like, no, you did your job, someone else just didn't, or they didn't care, or it wasn't as important to them. And let that be too. Like, I can't control that. So yeah, that's definitely a communication point that I want to improve on. So, I think that was the end of our questions for today. And yeah, we appreciate all your contributions. Please make sure to like and subscribe and share this with anybody that you
The
think could benefit.
submission form is in the description. You'll see the link.
It's anonymous, so you know, we just want to make sure that anyone who has a question feels comfortable asking. All right, we appreciate you all. Have a fantastic day, everybody. Bye.
Bye.